Welcome to Esea Premier Season 36 into the North American portion of the broadcast. If you stuck around for a couple of hours waiting for, my beautiful face to reappear, then you're a bit of a champion. I'm going to be taking you through all the action in terms of the hosting capacities today. Looking forward to these games. Obviously, we're getting towards the tail end of the 2 round-robin groups that we do have here in North America. Been plenty of pretty fantastic games so far. And looking forward to see who we get in the top 4 of each of these 2 groups to make it through to the playoffs and give themselves a shot at making their way into the ESL Pro Tour. Also had a couple of spicy little DreamHack qualifiers over the weekend that we might be able to discuss and break down, but I'm going to need to be talking to more than just myself, so we'll bring in the Casty boys for today. We have Mark and JRT back once again. Happy to see you guys. You did a fantastic job last week. Keen to see what you guys have in store for us, as we do have a pretty banger matchup today, right, JRT?
We really, really do. And we got a preview of that in the DreamHack Close qualifiers. Both these teams facing off against each other. 2 very close maps, both at 16-12. And honestly, I was casting it myself, and it felt like 3. Like that's how close the match was.
Let's take a look at the schedule of the games for today, and I'll get your opinion and your thoughts on some of these coming here today, Mike. Obviously, we do have Bad News Bears versus Extra Salt up the top of the screen there. That is the game that we will be covering today, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But how about some of these other matches that we've got running simultaneously to the one we will be covering?
I mean, I think I've got some eyes on Mythic versus SKDC, just because both teams have gone through some changes. No more Ocean for SKDC. I think Daff is at this point off of Mythic. I'm not quite sure who's playing in his place yet, so that's something to kind of keep an eye on. The other one's Rebirth should have a good time of it against Third Impact, but it's a good chance for Third Impact to impress. And then for Levitate and Imperium, well, these teams are fighting for survival down towards the bottom of the group. So it's a question of, can they keep their heads above water? Can they make it to the next season, or are they going to have to deal with relegation or potentially forced relegation, as we're, I believe, not taking as many teams into the next season as we have in this one. So it's a bit tough towards the bottom of the board. It's a bit of a scary prospect if they end up there.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that, Mike. We are sort of starting to craft some of the narratives and see how these teams fall in terms of the hierarchy of these round-robin groups. So let's take a look at them so we can get a better idea and sort of conceptualize everything that's going on right now. Damn, that looks good for Bad News Bears, up 8-0. And actually, today, going to be looking at both of the teams going undefeated in Group A so far. So that is a very spicy prospect to see who's going to be dropping that series, JRT.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they're the last 2 teams also that are undefeated. So there will only be one undefeated team remaining here tonight. Which one it'll be is anyone's guess. Like I mentioned, they play each other very closely in terms of the matchups, so it should be interesting to watch. But yeah, overall, Group A, it feels like it's shaping up to be top 3. Bad News Bears, Extra Salt, Mythic, of course. GGPR, maybe Oceanus can crack through there. But yeah, this is pretty much set in Group A. Group B is a little more interesting, though, because you have Rebirth along with Third Impact playing today. As Mike mentioned, each team is fighting for a playoff spot at this point, and we have the new addition to Rebirth Esports, that's Sixy, and Third Impact made a lot of roster changes in the offseason, and they're having some pretty good results. So yeah, that matchup's interesting, and honestly, as mentioned, Group B is kind of up in the air.
Yeah, we're looking at an exciting match, at least in terms of actual gameplay and in terms of what we're going to be seeing in the server. But there is a lot of exciting matches, as you did mention, JRT, there between some of these teams that are sitting dead in the middle of the group, because those are the make or break games in terms of making it through to the playoffs, right, Mike?
They are, yeah. So because we're taking 4 teams from each group into the playoffs, you've got some opportunities here for some of these rosters. There's an obvious upper crust, right? We've got that pretty defined. You can see it pretty plainly. Obviously in Group A, undefeated teams, but even in Group B, High Coast, RBG, going to be tough to dethrone from the position that they're finding themselves in. But the next rung of that, Triumph going to be a team that we're looking at to make playoffs. Recon 5 very potentially should be able to, but maybe some vulnerability there. There's a serious attempt from that middle of the pack, both to fight to the top and to avoid any doubts about the fact that they'll be in the league next season.
So it's nice to look at the 2 big round-robin groups there, look at the schedules of the games, and we can sort of craft the narratives and fill in all the gaps in terms of the commentary. But if you do want to know what these teams are playing for and, what's the big deal with making playoffs? How much money do you win? What's the point of even playing in the first place? You will want to go to that website, esl.gg/ESEA Premier. It does give you all the information about the path to the ESL Pro Tour, the DreamHack spots, all that good stuff, as well as the prize pool breakdowns and upcoming schedule of what the games are coming up. So you guys can make sure you don't miss out on any of the action. So that's always good to keep yourselves filled in. So we've looked at things pretty big picture so far in terms of, how the whole league is going. We're getting towards the end of this round robin, only a couple of matchups left in terms of this whole round robin sort of situation. So let's get a little bit closer in towards the actual matchup and sort of focus in on things. And I can't think of a better way to start that off than an interview with one of the boys from Extra Salt. So we've got Marky here. How you doing, mate?
Hey guys, what's up? I'm good.
I'm pretty good, thanks. So I just wanted to ask you how you're sort of filling in for Extra Salt. How are things settling in? Obviously, you had a pretty big stint where you didn't play an official for quite a while. Let us know what you were doing in those couple of months and what it's like to be back and playing officials.
Well, yeah, well, it's good to be back, and obviously, it's probably obvious. I gave Valorant a try, so I was chilling playing Valorant here and there, but then I don't know. CS is CS. You can't stop playing CS. I don't know. I just love the game, and I just wanted to keep playing.
Well, you seem to be doing pretty well for yourself. Obviously, Extra Salt doing quite well in the DreamHack qualifiers and things like that. But I'll let JRT and Mike ask some questions now.
Yeah, you seem to be slotting in pretty well in the DreamHack qualifier, Marky. I mean, was it had you been practicing with the team prior to that, or was just kind of jumping in? That was your first time playing with them again?
We've been practicing hard, I will say. Honestly, like so many hours of the day on the day.
Now I've got a few questions
Yeah.
for you, but my first one,
Okay.
most important one here, in the background of your camera, above, I'm guessing that's JT's setup that I see behind you. There's a little drawing. What's going on there? Talk to me about that.
I'm not sure who draw that, but yeah, that's Johnny, JT, or IGL.
From what I can see from here, the artwork looks impeccable. Now, you guys obviously just made it through the DreamHack Masters qualifier. You're going to be making it into DreamHack Masters Spring. That's very exciting. Going to be going on a European trip as a team. You've obviously just joined the team. You've already got an EU trip underway. You're playing in DreamHack Open next week. There's a lot of these matchups coming. My question for you is specifically about your opponent that we've got coming up. You just played them in that qualifier for DreamHack Masters. You'll probably be playing them this weekend in DreamHack Open. You're playing them tonight. You'll probably be playing them in the playoffs again as well. When you're up against the same team over and over again like that, like you're just going to necessarily do in an NA scene, what's it like playing an opponent where you're going to see them, 2 days after you last fought them?
Well, what it's like is sometimes you gotta expect them to counter strike you a lot because they just get used to your playstyle. They get used to your strats, so you gotta expect that all the time.
Yeah, obviously a lot of familiarity, playing each other all the time is what we get in some of these domestic scenes. So thanks for the interview, Marky. Best of luck with your repeat matchup and
All right,
all consecutive matchups.
thank you guys.
Always good to get a little bit of the insight there, and that's just the domestic scene for you. You're playing the same teams over and over again. We get it in every scene, get it in AU, get it in Asia, and that's where the good old Counter-Strike comes into the fray. Not to not hype this matchup or anything, but you're looking at both of these teams. They're very firmly secured playoffs. You're obviously going to go a little bit harder in some of those DreamHack qualifiers and things like that. In terms of this game, I feel like it's pure entertainment. It's for a little bragging rights, maybe a little bit of seeding, but I'm not sure how much that's going to matter because considering these two teams are probably the favourites for the competition. What do you think the perspective of these two teams coming into this matchup is going to be, Mike?
I actually think seeding's going to matter more than you think once we get down to it, especially considering this is Group A. And when you look at Group B, that bottom rung of, say, who's going to be third versus who's going to be fourth could be wildly different. There's a world where you're playing Triumph in the third seed. It's not likely, but they've had enough changes now where they could potentially lose enough games that that's what you're looking at. And that is such a different scenario from playing, say, RBG. No offense to RBG, but it just is by necessity. It's just the way it's going to shake out. So I think securing that 1 seed and trying to be the one undefeated team in your bracket goes a long way to building your intimidation factor and also making sure that you're going to have an easier run in the first run of playoffs.
Yeah, so just past the seeding, in terms of how these two teams match up there, JRT, do you think that we're going to see one team in North America start to take out a whole lot of these international qualifier spots? Obviously, Extra Salt's already gained the first one, and in some regions, domestically, I would think it used to be a little bit different in NA, but obviously things have gotten a little bit smaller since, we've had a bit of division of talent. Do you think we're going to see domestic dominance from Extra Salt, or do you think it's going to be a couple of spots thrown around to different teams here?
Honestly, Extra Salt are a solid team overall. Watching them play was quite a joy. And you have OC and Sonic. They kind of build their team around the operas, right, of OC and Sonic. And those guys are unbelievable at their roles. I can really see them going quite far. And I do believe there will be some dominance at the top. I don't think it'll necessarily be only one team. You're probably going to see Extra Salt and Bad News Bears maybe swap a few qualifiers, and each one will trade a little bit in that regard. Also, I think Triumph could come up and take some too. They obviously had that recent change to their roster, but I think that they could also succeed in that regard. So yeah, there will be some modicum of dominance, but it won't be by only one team in my regard, in my opinion.
Now, something that I was thinking of, Mike, when I look at these two teams is I look at Extra Salt. The core of the roster has a whole lot of tenure together. There's the structure there. They've got a very clear-cut sort of IGL who wants to sort of put all the bits and pieces together and has a lot of experience playing with the core of the team. Whereas Bad News Bears, that's like sort of a roster that, we were talking to old mate Swisher on the interview earlier on in the season, and he's kind of telling us, we just kind of chucked this roster together and everything sort of gelled beautifully. Do you think that, when they go and they play some of these better teams in NA, that they're going to have a little bit more trouble and need a little bit more learning process? Because, I'm not sure when I look at Bad News Bears if I can be convinced by the fact that Peter's literally 25 bombing in one half and absolutely dominating his opponent. I don't know if I can necessarily rely on that every game. What do you think?
Certainly not. I think they got a nice reminder of that fact when they were playing against Extra Salt. They've been sort of rolling through some of these cash cups, bullying other teams, really winning on their skill alone at times. Obviously, there's talent and skill behind that, and there's strategy, but they haven't necessarily needed to rely on it. And coming up against Extra Salt, who are now going to be competing in all of these events, they're butting heads against them. That's a bit of a better test. I mean, even Triumph, who would be one of the other natural rivals in the scene because of that forced change that John was talking about last week, they're adjusting, they're reformulating, they're figuring things out. So this is a nice rival for them to really clash against. And then the other interesting factor for both of these rosters, I think, that's going to come next week in the DreamHack Open is that Liquid is competing. Now, it might be a Liquid without Fallen, since apparently he hasn't been able to get back into the country just yet. Fingers crossed that comes through. But that is now the big dog of the region coming home to give everyone a chance to take a crack at the crown. And so for both of these squads, getting a chance to go against those tougher teams, against teams that you can't get away with making some of the silly plays that especially Bad News Bears are prone to making when they feel it, I think that's going to help mature both these rosters and develop them.
Yeah, I actually think that's a kind of an interesting talking point because we were talking about a whole lot of these online leagues. I remember I was covering EPL NA a little while ago on the B stream and watching a lot of these sort of XC9 games and things like that. And I'm looking at, Liquid and some of these top teams, and they look pretty mortal in terms of these online games. Do you think that's going to be a trend that continues, JRT, now that you see Liquid, you see EG go overseas and compete for more sort of, I guess, longer periods? Because usually the way I view it is you get your domestic team that goes overseas, gathers that experience, and when they come back, they kind of dominate a little bit because they've got a leg up and something unique that the opponents don't have access to, where they've been stuck at home competing against the talent. But, we're still in this online period. Do you think these teams that have kind of been shuffled and thrown together are going to be good enough to compete against those big dogs still?
Oh, that's a very loaded question, honestly. I think we'd have to wait and see if that actually, like those type of matchups will, when they actually happen, because honestly, whew, yeah, it's a big challenge to go up against a Liquid or an EG, man. Like that's a different league in my opinion, honestly. But we'll see what they can do. Honestly, the Bad News Bears have such amazing raw talent And I did expect them to go into the final of the closed qualifier in DreamHack, to be honest with you. And when it didn't happen, I was very surprised. But like Mike was saying, it's tough for them to find their focus sometimes because they were just formed, right? And they need to work on that strategy and get it going a little better.
Yeah, I mean, we are still just waiting for the vetoes, so I guess we can kind of jump into podcast mode a little bit and talk about some of those
Yeah.
DreamHack results if you guys want, because you guys actually got to cover some of those games. And I'm looking at, you obviously got Bad News Bears up there. You got the boys on Extra Salt taking the whole thing, and that's a pretty big opportunity, like you did mention, for them pretty early on, bringing this new player in, Mike. But also High Coast with a decent performance. What was your highlight of that tournament in terms of the game, number one, but also just more so a narrative and a storyline that you sort of feel pulled to?
I think High Coast was a good storyline to talk about. And the big storyline was, of course, regarding Extra Salt's roster move. Because MOTM got cut off of Extra Salt for Marky to come in. MOTM then immediately joins High Coast in place of DJ. And then he had a run through the bracket. MOTM was constantly towards the top of the board, making noise, making motions. RCF as well was a dynamic op for them, was looking phenomenal in a lot of their games. And High Coast really seemed to be starting to come into their own, starting to come into form in a big way. And they're a team that I expect to continue to get better. I guess they relate to Extra Salt a little bit more in terms of time frame, in the idea that the core has been together for a long time, and it's been slow incremental change where they've made change when they needed to for one reason or another, where they swapped out one player here or there, but they've mostly kept with the same formula, refining it, getting better and better and better. And when they're in form, as we saw last year in like the IEM New York tournament, they can smoke teams. They can really pull off some wild upsets, and they can go much deeper than you expect them to. So if they refine that form now with a player of MOTM's caliber in the roster, I think this could be a really interesting team when you're looking at some of those domestic NA matchups. And then even if they can pull through one of these qualifiers and get to the end, if they get a chance to go over to Europe, I think we could see them surprise people.
I'm looking forward to that as well. Obviously, give more and more of those opportunities towards some of these domestic teams. I mean, that's what Premier's always been about. Usually you get that spot, go through to the global challenge and things. Interesting to see how a lot of these tournaments have sort of restructured a little bit. I recently learned that, we got our national championship tournaments that go towards global challenge and things like that now. So we have like our Australian ANZ champs. We're going to be sending a team over to get smoked by whoever wins Meisterschaft or the Polish championship in Europe, probably. Although, you never know what happens. But obviously here in ESEA Premier, you get opportunities to go through a DreamHack. You've got those DreamHack qualifiers as well. You've got your opportunity to go through the ESL Pro Tour. So that's always good. In terms of that DreamHack qualifier, though, JRT, what was your favorite series that you covered and what happened in it?
Oh, man, I would have to say that the Bad News Bears Extra Salt series was very, very good. But there was also
That's good to
Extra
hear.
Salt versus Triumph. It's hard to choose which one was better because Triumph, honestly, they pushed it 3 maps and it was really quite interesting. The only thing with the Triumph matchup is that Triumph really slipped when they got to Overpass and lost 6-7. So for me, that was maybe why that one would be a step underneath the Extra Salt Bad News Bears matchup, which was literally blow for blow, back and forth Counter-Strike, and it was a joy to watch, honestly. I think we're going to get a lot of that here tonight.
I'm hoping we do. I'm always kind of interested to see how these teams shake up in terms of the map pool and things like that, because obviously Extra Salt, they like to work their way through a pretty diverse map pool, go pretty wide on that map pool as well. So naturally that's going to have a bit of a trickle-down effect. You're going to have to see some of these other teams starting to widen and diversify their map pool, which is always a little bit troublesome when you're shaking up the rosters and changing around players and things like that. Need to get that prac in. But it seems like a lot of these teams are pretty motivated, Mike, and pretty keen to work hard. Like you hear in Marky, he said they're pracking nonstop. They're pracking all the time. He's ecstatic to not have to be playing Valorant anymore. Now gets to play the superior game, right? So that's always
Music
great.
to my ears.
I'm happy we get to keep him. I know, a lot of players have made the transition over. And honestly, a lot of players who were languishing in Premier, who deserved a chance at the next level, but just couldn't quite get the contract offer that they deserved, are having a lot of success in Valorant. So it's hard to fault people for going over. I understand the motivations there, but it's nice to be able to keep a player of Marky's caliber competing here in Counter-Strike. He's very good at what he does. He is one of the slipperiest players I've ever watched in terms of being able to get in a position he has no business being in and no one expects him in, and then kill 3. Like, that is the Marquee effect to my eyes. He is very frustrating to play against for opposing teams, and he makes them constantly second guess and question where he could be on a map. And to me, that's a huge X factor. So I'm very pleased to have him still with us.
Well, you're speaking about slipperiness. You're speaking about sort of trying to swivel and get in amongst your opponent. I think a good way to do that is the veto, which we finally do have ready, and keen to see if we're going to have anything different, because you guys talked about it before. We have a matchup that we're going to be seeing a lot of. These teams have already recently played each other, and we'll have to play each other again. And that's sometimes where the vetoes get a little bit interesting, right? You get some different pocket picks. You get some reactions to things that have happened in the previous series. So let's roll it out and see if we get anything interesting, anything spicy compared to last time. And Mike's already got a bit of a grin on his face, so I'll let him go first.
Yeah.
Extra Salt made this a little riskier. So here's the thing about their map pools in general, is Extra Salt has a massive advantage in this map pool because they're excellent at the map that Bad News Bears vetoes, permas. So they can't touch it because they've occasionally floated Vertigo, but they cannot do it in this matchup because they know they will get dismantled by Extra Salt. So that's a perma down for the Bad News Bears. Their choice is made for them. There's no way they can go about it. And then Extra Salt has a lot of options. They go for Dust 2, a map that's not really great for either side, but they're just going to take it out of the pool because they don't want to play it. Bad News Bears mix up their pick. They previously picked Inferno in the series. It was a 16-12, but I think Bad News Bears felt like they should have won that particular matchup. They go for Mirage instead this time, which again, strong map for both sides. Bad News Bears have been really good against other domestic competition on this map so far over the last, since the year began, really, since this roster began. But it's an option. Then the Inferno pick comes through from Extra Salt, which is surprising to me because they had a massive opportunity to punish by bringing it back to Train, one of their favorite maps to play, where they again just bested them. They had the choice of those 2 maps that they had played in the previous series. They went with Inferno this time. I don't know what to make of that one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of breaks down. I'm kind of wondering whether this is, counter strat, whether this is something different for the sake of trying to actually win this match for seeding purposes and things like that. Because I've been in a similar position on some of my teams in the past, and if I'm playing like a seeding match or something like that, I don't mind a bit of a wacky veto. I don't mind throwing something crazy out there and playing a little bit looser just to kind of throw my opponent off kilter, give them a little bit less info and try to change up how I'm playing. What are you thinking is the reason for this, JRT? You think that they're going full gung-ho with the veto, trying to win this series with everything they got, or you think this one's a bit funky?
Oh, this one is a little funky, honestly. Mirage in particular for me is a very strange one that I didn't expect to see. Well, obviously it was going to be picked eventually, but the thing is, Extra Salt doesn't play it at all. They haven't played it in the last 3 months once. Versus Bad News Bears, who've played it twice in the last week. They beat GGPR 16-0, and then they beat who was it? High Coast 16-5. So
Jeez.
they love playing on Mirage. Yeah, it works really well with their playstyle too currently. So this one should be. That said, Extra Salt is very solid overall as well, and I'm pretty sure they've played Mirage their fair share of times. Everyone has. It just hasn't been played in league play, so we'll see how that impacts them. But yeah, Inferno. I think that Extra Salt has struggled a little bit on Inferno as of late, so it is a curious pick, but maybe they just want to try and improve on it and test themselves against a really solid opponent.
Well, we're getting pretty close to getting into the game, maybe like 75 seconds or something like that. I believe I heard in my ear there, Mike. So what do you think about the Mirage pick in particular? Because that's the first map that we're going to be seeing straight up. Obviously, we talked about it a little bit. Do you think it's a case of confidence coming off the couple of good results that they've had? Or do you think it's a case of maybe you're trying to exploit a little bit of ring rust to the opponent? We see it all the time, a map that is previously quite strong for a team. They don't get to play it a whole lot for a while, or the vetoes just don't break out that way. And sometimes the team can be a little bit slow, a little bit rusty on it after they haven't played official on it in a while. What do you think?
I think, honestly, the more I think about this, the more I think this is TC, the coach of Extra Salt, trying to figure out if they can match up against Bad News Bears on Mirage, right? Testing their Mirage against a very good Mirage team to see what it's looking like as they head into the DreamHack Open. Because if I had to guess, Extra Salt is confident if this becomes a 3-map series, if we go to Overpass as a decider, they've got it there. So This is interesting. I think this first map could be shockingly one-sided for the Bad News Bears, purely because
Okay.
we haven't seen Extra Salt play it in an official, and I'm curious. I'm so curious for this.
I think it's interesting that you say Extra Salt have got Overpass lockdown 100%. I mean, I remember I don't think you guys were casting it, but I was watching this game. It's 90 seconds now, by the way, until game. We had one of the boys. He I think went for a little bit of a run around the block, just getting himself pumped up. Maybe did a couple push-ups. I was watching Bad News Bears play Overpass. I don't think it was against like one of the best teams. It might have been against Oceanus, I'm thinking, is what I'm remembering. But their executes look pretty tight, you know? They didn't look like they were just pugging it out. They looked like they were actually giving it a fair go. So I'm kind of, I don't know which way this is going to go. I think this could definitely go either way, even if we make it to all three maps. What do you think, JRT? Do you think the map pool is really that skewed?
I don't think any map will skewed one way or another between these two teams. Honestly, I was talking about it before we started. It's going to be exciting. I mean, Mike, I understand totally why he's saying that Mirage is going to be maybe one-sided for the Bad News Bears given the recent results, but Extra Salt is just so good, especially OC and Sonic, that op duo, man. Wow, they can really rain hell down on you, and either of them watching mid on Mirage could really be lethal. So I think that's going to be a big difference maker.
All right. Thank you for tuning into our NACS podcast. But finally, we will actually get some gameplay on your screens. You can unmute the stream. You can get ready for some great casting because it is going to be Mike and JRT bringing you all the action. Take it away, boys.
Now, I do want to clarify one thing as we take over the action. I'm not saying Overpass is going to be one-sided. I'm saying Extra Salt is confident they can take it. I think it'll actually be a banger of a game if we get it, but there's a reason that here in NA we do call it OC Pass, or at least I do. They're very good at the map. Still, we've got Mirage to get through now, and this will be a big test for Extra Salt. This is a blank slate for us as far as what Extra Salt they're going to be bringing. We've got nothing to really draw on in the last 3 months in terms of information. So it's Bad News Bears' game to lose. And frankly, over the series, this is a must-win, and it's a win we'd expect. So retake setup on towards A. We're just going to have one player holding in JT. He will immediately fall because he's got the flashes and the kit to set up said retake, so he'd really rather not die. And it does seem like a very straightforward play from the Bad News Bears. A swing from stairs is bold from Sonic, but it pays off. Already catching ahead. And well, this bomb should make its way to be planted. JT's doing further damage. JT has gone down, so those flashes may be out of hand, and Jonji getting a second. Now opens up spawn. Sonic trying to make a move aggressively. They're really just operating as singular units here. Not working in concert, not working together, John, and they're paying the price. Bomb now down. Timer to play off of. Confirmation of player's position. Everything is turning up good news for the Bears. There's the flashbang. Taken off of JT's corpse, put to good effect. Fang still going to get a kill off of it, but he's low on health, and he's not long for this world. Left to the new addition of Marky, and Marky hits the dirt.
Great start for the Bad News Bears, up 1-0. And just to go over their results on Mirage over the last 3 months, Mike, they are undefeated. In fact, 5-0, 80 rounds for 23 rounds against only 23 rounds that teams have gotten against them on this map here over the last 3 months, in a plus 57 round differential. They are very good here. Like we said, though, we have nothing to really go off of for Extra Salt because they haven't played here in League yet.
Okay, OC. Look, it was just a scout on the other side, but he just got erased by that peek from Jonji. And all right, let's highlight a couple players on the Bad News Bears because we've been crowing praise about Extra Salt, but I want to talk about the Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
This team is so dang good. Jonji has been ferocious. He's achieved a level that I've never really seen from him. I mean, and he was good on Chaos, but it feels like he's just getting better and better with time. You're seeing Peter, who's back in form, having taken a long time off from competition. That's going to be a nice kill for Fang, but not much more. And Swisher has really bloomed in this roster, coming back from his sojourn over to he's looked like a different player again. I mean, it's just I can heap praise on the players on this roster again and again and again. We're seeing a pretty swift take. Jonji now back in towards mid to clean it up. He does die, John. I don't know. This should be such a spicy series.
I really do feel it will be, as well as Sonic's going to try and spot a target. So is JT, and JT gets sprayed down by Swisher in CT. That leaves only Sonic standing with an AK, which is very valuable for him, of course, since Extra Salt forced up into this round and will be stuck on a save, since, of course, this bomb is going to tick away and give the Bad News Bears that second round victory. It actually should be, it's pretty costly for the Bad News Bears to lose this AK, because the other rifles that are in play right now are 2 Galils, and Swisher only has the UMP45. So a good rifle saved by Extra Salt into this round, and they can buy some pistols around that to try and get something going. But yeah, we're talking about how good Jonji has been. The stats tell the same story as you were, Mike. 256 frags on the season so far, plus 96 kill to death differential, a 1.60 KDR, and an ADR of 100.4. He also has 26 3-kill plus rounds, 4 of those being 4Ks.
He good. That's
Very
my
much so.
That's my expert statistical analysis. There is this one AK as a potential threat in the apartments, and it's actually looking like that AK might be put to good effect. There is Jonji here to duel off with. Even if they get this kill, obviously it's not going to make too much of a difference since the bomb is far back, and Jonji will actually win the first face against Marky, but not the trade. Health gone from Sonic, but the rifle does win the day. Bungie working his way into Palace. This could be the next threat, and there's the shot from Fang. What a connection coming through. Nicely done here for Fang. And suddenly things are getting concerning. They got control in towards ramp. They're bringing pressure back towards site. OC rips the head from Alter's shoulders. This is concerning, John. Majorly so. A 2v4 now. And they're completely isolated. A player in con with just a UMP and one trying to work his way out of apartments. I think they might still be able to get this kill on JT and isolate one of the sites, but JT has a rifle now, so he's far from not being a threat.
Ooh, this is dicey for sure. 40 seconds left on the clock. Peter is going to sneak through apartments. He could catch off JT, who has his back turned right now. Now JT turns around, gets the info. Peter misses the shots, and JT's going to try and back off here, but he can't. Swisher pinches in from Cat, sprays down JT. That leaves Sonic alone here for the time being on the B site, and the Bad News at least get a bomb plant that is could be more. Peter drops Sonic, makes it a 2v2, and now the HP advantage in favor of the Bad News Bears. The AK gets given to Fang, who's the higher HP player. Makes sense for OC. Swisher gets one and a second, 3 on the round, and the Bad News Bears clutch it out, Mike. Nicely done. That was very close.
Fantastic recovery from the Bad News Bears. Just so well done to get back in. Obviously, you don't like getting to that dangerous a position. There was only one rifle and many deagles, so that round is expensive. They'll be able to buy back in around it, but here's the op out for OC, and this is where things are going to start to get interesting. All the guns are on the table for Extra Salt. Where do they go with it? A little bit of aggression in towards mid, perhaps, but a quick withdrawal after utility in mid convinces them that it's not a good idea to contest this. They're still not watching, though. OC has not been pushed out just yet, so if they do test him, this could get ferocious.
OC's going to try and spot one. He sees one, but he cannot connect, and then Jonji takes him down. That's a great push by Jonji into window room. Op is deleted, and it looks like Fang might be isolated in connector. He is. Jonji gets his second, and now they're going to pinch onto the site. JT is the last one left on the site. Jonji, who else? With the 3-piece on the round, Swisher and Alter wrap it up with a pretty bow, and the Bad News Bears don't lose a single player into the round. Their economy gets built up considerably, and they're sitting pretty now.
That is a great way to wash out the taste of nearly losing to Deagles right out of your mouth. Just go destroy them on a full gun round. Dominate, assert yourself, show why teams are avoiding playing Bad News Bears here on Mirage. I mean, I cannot imagine how happy Mad Cow was when he saw this one come through in the pool and he could go in with the vetoes. It's like they gave him a Christmas present.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, the Bad News Bears, let's see if they get challenged at all, though. We haven't really seen that proper buy-up here for Extra Salt. I mean, we did see the op come into play. I shouldn't say that. But the Bad News Bears will be tested again, I guess is my point, Mike, by this Extra Salt roster before this half is said and done. With 1 minute and 22 seconds, excuse me, left on the clock here. Swisher is going to cycle back. He briefly went into the T apartments just to get some info, but didn't see anything. Peter, the op master this season in Premier, sitting number 2 at 131 coming into this match, is going to get the opening frag here. Make that 139 frags, Mike.
Just keep a running tally. If your statistics aren't perfectly up to date, are they even worth it? They might be able to isolate this player top mid. No need to continue fighting. Okay, Alter will just kill everybody, so I guess it's fine. It's fine. Potential threat. That was the one risk in the round for the Bad News Bears, was that he'd go down isolated and give away his gun, but Alter's good for 3. Now he's probably got a pretty good idea where this last player is coming from. He's not exposed to it. Marky's not going to be able to get anything going here. There we go. There's the shot. But now someone's already in position, so if he goes for this rifle, he should be dead. And it's not going to take long. There we go. Janji gets the chase. The round is over. Instead of picking up his comrade's AK, he will stick on the M4 and spam the corpse. Priorities are important here, John.
Of course, you have to get that BM in. It's important.
Janji is an expert at it.
He really is.
Chief prophet of the Church of the Teabag.
Yeah, well, he makes it a little more spicy to watch, of course, and might get on the nerves of some teams. I know most of them will probably brush it off, but, you know, when things aren't going your way and Janji keeps doing that, eventually it adds up. Fang is going to connect here through the smoke onto Cat, getting Alter, making it a quick 5v4 in favor of Extra Salt. And Extra Salt OC has been unbelievable as of late here, Mike, but let's get back to that, as OC is going to get the frag here, and then Fang catches off Janji trying to sneak through the smoke. So this is looking better and better for Extra Salt.
It absolutely is. Now, this is a 2v5. We saw 2v4 get out of their hands, but certainly not again. Fang, I don't know whether he was just spamming that. Now this big problem. Peter's being pushed from both sides. He can't get any damage, and so clean rounds are going to be traded here. The double op will even be retrieved as Sonic finds his preferred weapon. Now we've got both guns out on the server. This is going to get tougher for the Bad News Bears. Look, you didn't have to win that round, but dropping it in such a fashion without doing any damage through is problematic. And again, we saw everybody die in isolated fights. Felt a little disjointed, and that's something that if you deploy it consistently, you're not going to really be able to break Extra Salt down over the long run. Let's see what we got. Fast B play potentially coming through here. Smoke's thrown over. A lot of utility coming in. I think they're just going to dump out of apartments. There's only one player here initially, not even a catwalk player, so this is a good read. Marky is about to be in for a world of hurt. Can he do enough to stave them off and help out his team? Because this is very straightforward. Straight up the gut they go, and he gets damage done onto Janji, but the site is now lost. You got Sonic from the market, but this bomb will be planted. There's not much he can do about it. You might even see an early save call here if Sonic can't get anything here from the peak. Bomb's going to be planted. Yeah, they're pulling off. They don't want this. They don't want this heat.
Wow. That is really conservative, though. I mean, you look at their bank account, it's not that bad. Usually you'd see a 4-man save in a situation where you have everyone below the 1K mark, but they have 2K pretty much across the board, 3K for Sonic and 3K for Fang as well. Okay, I mean, Extra Salt has proven to be conservative in the past, so it's not entirely surprising, and it does make sense in the long run, which is where they're always looking. So the Bad News Bears are going to strike back with a 6th round victory, and things are looking great for them. But now that we have a brief moment to speak, Mike, we can talk about how good OC has been in that DreamHack qualifier that we were talking about in the pregame. He had 186 frags in 8 maps played. That's an average of 23 frags per map. He also had a plus 60 kill to death differential, which was good for a 1.45 KDR and an ADR of 86.4. I mean, just, he's a beast. And Sonic was right behind him at 156 frags and at 19 frags per map. So these two together are scary, and this double op setup is going to come through for a second consecutive round.
It was a key piece of pretty much every setup we saw from them through the weekend. Was the double op. As soon as they could get it up, as soon as they could consistently get it up, that was tough for teams to handle. Now, I will say, I think the Bad News Bears, some of their frenetic pace could help them out, particularly here on Mirage, where there's not as many dominant opping angles. OC has a pretty good idea of what Peter's going for there, and he'll just hold for it. So that's a kill found with no ability for recourse. There comes the recourse, though, and its name is Janji. Player into window. There is presence in ladder, and Sonic, not prepared for it, gets caught off by Alter. I guess he was scoped in and just did not spot the player, but he gets taken out. Very problematic now. They've got some mid-control. They want to bring the pressure on towards B, and you can see this push from Marky. He took control in towards the apartments, but that means he's not going to be able to contest for the site. JT will catch one as they retreat. He just catches vision before they move over. Now Marky, his presence revealed. He gets one, but the trade is there. A 2v2 with the bomb going down. Janji with deep control in the market from behind the shelves. He will show them that he's restocked. And now it comes to JT. He's an 8 down. He's down 37 points of health. He's in a 1v2. There is money available for the team, so he can risk going for it, but time is of the essence, and he doesn't have any utility to make his life easier. He can spot anything. They're not giving him an inch. Janji's going to check it, and there's the clear. There's the kill. There's the round. 7-1 at this point for Bad News Bears, as they are showing exactly what has allowed them to be so good on Mirage.
This is as good as any team has played against Extra Salt in recent memory. I mean, on any map. So, Yeah, the Bad News Bears, like you said, Mike, strutting their stuff on Mirage. Extra Salt haven't found the answer just yet, but they will have the economy as a result of that four-man save to buy up here again. Double op setup as well. The 3M4A4 is rounding at the buy and almost full utility. I think JT actually utilized most of his early on, so they did have full utility. Bad News Bears might be going for the engagement in Palace here. They were. OC gets flashed out, and he'll back off. So no frags on the board as of yet. As Peter, along with the rest of the Bad News Bears, looking to line up some more smokes for that A site.
Does seem like it's going to end here, doesn't it? No presence anywhere else on the map. We're hitting the minute mark soon. At that point, they'll likely go. Now, the interesting factor for me is how far up JT is. Playing right by Ramp and Palace. Is the utility over? He's going to catch more than one here before being traded. Yes, he is. Not going to be damaged at all. Or rather, he is, but he gets away with his life. Gets away with an AK upgrade. Now they're coming to clear him. He's looking both ways. OC takes one, but there's the trade. While he's into limit space, still work needs to be done. Good flashbang timing. They're trying to get these kills, but they're running out of bodies. Sonic. Great shot to polish off. 2 big kills in the round to secure it. An Extra Salt, they are on the board for their second.
There's Sonic waking up. OC's gotten a couple of frags too, but it's really Sonic key in that round. Finding 2. Peter was shut down over at the A ramp, and that's all she wrote. So Extra Salt needs a lot more of that here in this first half. And I mean, so far, when the Bad News Bears were tested, they ended up striking back after that first round victory. We'll see if it happens again after the second one. Peter going for the quick pick up the A ramp. Doesn't connect on anything. Pretty much a blind fire shot through that Molotov at a common angle. No one was there. So they're just going to back off of it, realizing, you know what, maybe A's not the best play. But Extra Salt are waiting at mid. Look at the aggression from Sonic.
Wow.
Coming up, connects on the head of Alter. He also has support of Fang, who's waiting around that corner. This is just a kill zone for Extra Salt if the Bad News Bears choose to come through. John G, in the meantime, does get OC, but Fang is waiting at the top of Cat, looking at underpass to take down anyone who comes through, and that's going to give them, that's Extra Salt, and a man advantage, Mike.
This is interesting. You obviously had to be concentrated in towards underpass. Sonic missing a shot. He's going to have to give up the angle. So Swisher's now found the space, and his teammates are going to come to help him fill it. Extra Salt, they've given up mid. They'll play from the sights. I don't mind this. You're up a man. There's only 50 seconds left on the clock. You got some time to toy with. Give them the space. Force them to come further into sight to find you. Sonic's ops now out towards Ticket. That's going to be a potent angle. We've seen players get caught off by this window boost a couple times, so you can see how focused in on it JT is. Not going to catch it this time. Oh, as I say that, he looks away. The timing could be brutal, but no. Flips back, and there we go. That should be the kill that helps them secure it. They'll smoke him out of the angle to try and pressure on him, but now they've got to contend with Sonic's op. And Sonic actually doesn't have to force the fight. A bomb plant's not a huge concern for them. They want to win the round one way or another. Molly's going to go down. They're running out of time here. Molly to cover Sonic. A Ticket. He might get caught. He's not going to. The Molly doesn't go deep enough, and at this point, Spongy, he's going to run out of clock. He needs to not die after timer, but he'll die shortly before it. Yeah. JT puts a bullet between the eyes. And that is going to be a third for Extra Salt as they're making a recovery late here in this half. They're far from out of it. Could get this to a very respectable scoreline, especially if they can keep Bad News Bears off balance. For that time, the aggression top mid. That was the answer. I think it was the antidote. This super aggressive play from Sonic, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah, and even if they decided to go further, like I was saying, just a kill zone, because Fang was set up around the corner, they would have been focused over on Sonic, and it'd been just curtains. But it was curtains anyway, because Extra Salt was on point across the map. Looking at the scoreboard here, Jonji, 14-6 with 152 ADR, Mike, in 10 rounds of play. He continues to be the hot hand for the Bad News Bears. Over on Extra Salt, it's actually Fang at the top at 9-7, a player who's blossomed over the last year to find himself a spot on this Extra Salt roster.
The next NA hope. Fang.
Yes.
Been on the come up, most decidedly. Whoa, that shot splits the difference. Now they know it's a fast play coming through. Pressure is on. Sonic connects for one, but he can't get more. And Marky forced off by a flashbang. He's going to reroute to get it. Now OC's there to support. This should be all okay. Marky put in the work. Yes, he'll lose his life to Swisher. He's picked up an AWP, but what more can they do? Question for him, can I get this bomb planted? Can I find one more kill? 2 more, ideally. Heck, win the round. Why not? They're not going to come through. He's got him in at 15. He could just leave, but he's going to try and cross the window, and OC lies in wait. The op was forced off the door angle. Well, found a new home. And there we go. Extra Salt find their fourth. They keep 3 alive as well, so this double up's going to be able to keep rolling. Reminder, folks, something to keep an eye on is if they do win a round with close numbers, the double up's expensive to reinvest into. So having a little extra capital goes a long way to making that easier.
That was a good play by Marky as well. You saw the replay, holding the angle on default, coming around, flicking for those 2. And then the Bad News Bears just had nothing left in the tank after that point. Now they're going to try again up connector, and OC's starting to find his rhythm. Jonji, his latest victim. Quick 5v4 in favor of Extra Salt, and the Bad News Bears have been losing bodies early in the rounds, and that's never a good sign, especially on your T side.
Feels like some frustration might be building here for the Bad News Bears since they've been running over their opponents in the early rounds, but now losing these players early, taking some of the more aggressive plays. OC's going to catch one trying to get into the window. This is, again, a position they've tested quite a few times in Extra Salt. Well, they're now just holding it very dedicatedly. That's 2 rounds in a row where we've seen a player die trying to make that jump, trying to get into that angle. Should be a decent hold for ear for JT. There are 2 players in towards connector. As soon as he spots, there's the comms, gets the damage onto Peter, and he can back off the angle. Sonic comes in for the finishing blow on Spongy, and they're clearing out the connector. They know there's another here because he didn't get the assist, and he knows he has the damage. Now they know where Swisher is. All of the information is theirs, and none of the health is here for Peter. 40 seconds, 1 bullet realistically, maybe 2 if they're shooting him in the toes away from death. This is not looking good, and if he hops up, Sonic might just give him a nice little haircut. He's actually bracketed by ops. This is not a great situation to be in. This is the power of the double op setup for Extra Salt. You're just completely sectioned off. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's just great play by Extra Salt. One thing I really admire about them is they can read the play very well. You'll notice that when the first frag comes through, they'll eventually kind of all pincer down on the same angle and make it really difficult for the other players that are left to kind of find the space they need to move around. And yeah, you saw it right there, just like you mentioned, bracketed between ops, the rifle there to support. They really do a good job playing with those 2 great oppers on their squad. So, Bad News Bears going to call a timeout here, Mike, to talk things over. It makes sense losing 4 rounds in a row. Things appear to be slipping away far more so than they have in the past against the teams they played on Mirage.
I think they need to pump the brakes a little bit. Their pace has begun to get red just a bit. You got to throw some of those change-up pitches in there to keep people off guard. You're just going fast every round. They start to expect you to be there fast, and you lose some of the edge. We're maybe seeing it here. A lurk in Palace, some control in the apartments. Ooh, not quite a catch. Marky will miss a nade, so at least the damage can't come back the other way. But we're seeing a little bit more of a spread default. They do still take mid, and mid is still given. Curious to see if they try and jump a player up on the bench again here, since it's become so dangerous for them to do so. Peter trying to find something out of the Palace lurk. Not going to see anything just yet. There's a player just under the balcony. They should be wary of this spot since it's where Spongy likes to play on the other side. Oh, he's going to spot one. There we go. There's the shots. There's the kills. That might be the opener. Jonji clears out the Valve. Now things are looking very dangerous indeed for Extra Salt. They know they're pressured in. Both ops positions now confirmed from kills, but Marky's out, so it's just going to be left to those AWPs and just Sonic. He actually does tag Alter through the box, nearly the second as well, as he's looking for those X-rays. They're going to plant it. He's going to try and come around. That's a little bold. He will get the first, but there's the trade potentially, and yeah, it does come through. Bad News Bears, they take the pause, they figure things out, and with Deagles, they take a round.
I kind of like the decision by Sonic to go for that aggression, realizing that they're on the eco. They only have the Deagles, no head armor in play. But yeah, wasn't very likely he'd come out successful at the end of the day. And it was the Bad News Bears finally striking back on a Deagle buy-up. I mean, of all things. And that's what brings them back into their winning ways in this first half of action. They've also secured the first half with that 8th. Now OC's going to go aggressive here up the ramp. First time he's been in this position, in fact. Usually playing around mid as Jonji gets sniped by him. 5v4 again. And that's another early frag in the round in favor of Extra Salt. Almost every single time that's happened here in this half, Extra Salt has come up with the win at the end of the day. But Swish is going to wait a little patiently here. He spots out Marky. That'll even things out at a 4v4.
Little over aggression coming in from old Marky. Wanted to take the space. Swisher was waiting for it. I think he was hoping that maybe Presence was distracted off of that area as a result of the pick out towards ramp. There's still plenty of time to play with. They don't have any mid control, which is interesting. They've been establishing for mid control round after round after round. This time, none. And admittedly, I don't think Extra Salt know this. They've got a player in the ladder room. That's Sonic. But otherwise, they've got no vision in towards mid. So there should be an assumption that there might be presence here. Might be a player up con. No one clearing that angle. It's definitely a risk. You could see OC's going to check it on the mini-map. He's just clearing it, seeing if something's at hand. And that's the threat that they've instilled in these players. That if you give us mid, we're going to take mid. Now the smokes are going to come over. Pressure's going to be on for OC. He falls off the ticket booth preemptively. We saw this bout position cleared from Connector, but this time there's no one to do so. So OC's going to connect, and that might set up JT for more. No, JT silenced. Still 3-on-3. Players now starting to make their way over. A molly to force this off the angle. Now the Palace player can get out, and that's going to be a plant that they're going for. An altar, even a punish beyond it. Swisher the follow-up. Now it's all in hand. They're looking for round number 9, and they should be getting it. The nade doesn't find home on Swisher, and that was probably their last hope of taking this round. Sonic in a 1v3. He gets swung. He gets dealt with. Double digits on the table for Bad News Bears, and they're looking to take this half home.
The Bad News Bears are not missing a beat with the BM as it's alter that time. Spraying down the body. They want to get in the heads of Extra Salt as much as possible. And hey, it's not a bad idea. They are a very tough team to beat. Take every single edge you can get as the Bad News Bears are 1 round away from double digits. And of course, it's their last chance to get that in the first half since we're in round number 15. Swish are going to open things up very well against OC. He wins the off-the-off duel, but they don't check for Fang around the corner here.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Balcony goes the way of Fang. Jonji and Alter are deleted. He picks up the AK, gets a third, could find a fourth for himself on Peter, and he does. Fang looking for the ace, and he finds it. Fang, the 5K, the perfect ace coming through, and the Bad News Bears will lose that round. Extra Salt keep them from getting to double digits, Mike.
What an exclamation point, and that might just be enough to swing the momentum in the second half. We are going to take a quick break here and be back with half number 2 of Mirage.
In paradise, the sun never goes, it's a feeling. We watch the waves wash over the shore, the horizon was blinding. This could be the end of the world as we know it. Oh, this could be the end of the world as we know it. And we never thought we'd get this far. I'm gonna stay true. These songs I wrote for you. Oh, they make me blue. They make me blue. What did you say to me? You wanted to be free. Do you believe? I want you to want you to believe.
And we're back here with the second half of Mirage. It is a 6-9 scoreline. Nice, as we did see one last round on the end there to raise the spirits of Extra Salt, but we've still seen what we expected from Bad News Bear. We've seen an explosive, ferocious Mirage. This has been the map that has been their bread and butter in Premier and beyond. John, do we think Extra Salt, for whom this is normally their perma, can battle back here in the second?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going to be easy, especially considering the Bad News Bears got that 9-6 lead on their T side, which is typically the side that will get less here on a map like Mirage. So yeah, it's very difficult to penetrate through, of course. If you don't have that utility, it's completely impossible, in fact. So yeah, Bad News Bears look great. Extra Salt, yes, I do have faith that they can punch back into this one, but it's going to come down to their fragging abilities, which they have a lot of.
They do tend to have those. I have been told, I have it on good authority, that they're all right. They're all right at clicking heads.
They're okay.
They're okay at it. They're okay at it. Let's see where they're headed. It looks like we're going to get a bit of a clash in towards mid, and there are 3 bodies here. Swisher going aggressive on it. This might be red. It is indeed. Fang hard cleared that, but there's more bodies here. Alter gets the trade. Peter, stuck in the window, is going to need Alter to do some work, and it seems like it's going to be a fast split on towards A. At least that's what they're going for, but they're getting dismantled. They're dropping apart. It's all just left to Fang. The man who got the opener needs to get all remaining 4. He opened or ended last half with an ace. Can he get another? Down to 14 points of health. They are giving him the opportunity for the fight, but no, Spongy will put him down. That would have been a bridge too far. That's interesting. Extra Salt, it felt like they were even prepared for what Bad News Bears wanted to run as that second half pistol, but it didn't matter. BNB still came out on top.
Yeah, and you mentioned the ace by Fang. That's a great way to build momentum into a second half, but you got to win the first round to continue that forward. And unfortunately for Extra Salt, they do not. That's actually the first ace of the season for the squad. Outside of that, it's 6-4 case for OC, who's tied for number 2 in Premier in that category. And also, another notable stat for OC, 98.5 ADR, number 3 in the league, Mike.
Who has higher ADR than that?
Oh, I think it's, well, Jonji's one of them. So he's at 100.4.
Dang.
He's sitting at number 2. I think there's one person above Jonji as well. I'm going to double check that right now.
That's actually insane now that I'm thinking about how many, because they're what, 8-0 right now, the Bad News Bears? Something like that?
That's right. They're 8-0.
8 games over 100 ADR over the course of them. I know they've been beating up on some teams, but even then, whew, he has been so good. Controlling towards mid, but Jonji's now come up the underpass. Speak of the devil. Apparently he was listening. They're going to recover the bomb. Lost a bit of health, and now nerves put on, but Spongy, the MP9's not really suited to that fight, and Marky will catch a second. So this is a bomb plan, if not more. Positioning got the better of the Sight's players on A, and the fact that they didn't have a long-range rifle to work with. There is actually a lineup as the smoke goes up. No, Marky's on the right side of the box to get the plant done. They do have the triangle approach. They can come back in from every side, but they need to start to get these kills. That's what they're looking for. Trades are there, but at the cost of so much health. These players are vulnerable. Now they need Jonji to do all the work. Sonic, he's got 3 low HP players. You know where he's playing from now, and Jonji's just going to come into the fight. That's so bold. They're smoking him off. Sonic gets the first, but Swisher, the trade, and the defuse will be there for the Bad News Bears. That round, way too close for comfort, but they did take it home.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, yeah, that was crazy. It's just chaos, but Extra Salt did get the bomb plan, so that helps them out. They took down 3 bodies. That's going to force the investment from the Bad News Bears. So if you're going to lose a round, I mean, that's one of the best ways to do it, especially when they were not really in the best position in terms of the hardware they had in their hands. You're going to see the replay here. The Bad News Bears dismantling the inferiorly armed opponents, Mike. And the number 1 player, by the way, in ADR is Cynic at 102.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's, see where I try and pick him up.
Yes, sir.
There's going to be an exchange towards top mid. Alter wanted to get aggressive. JT's holding for it now, so maybe they're going to be able to stop doing that one. Once you get caught once, you can't really go back to it. Spongy does eventually get cleaned out of his hidey hole. Bomb will likely go down now, but there's already a player in towards Ticket. This exchange is huge. Fang wins it. Now this could be a save. I'd even go so far as to say it should be a save, and that seems to be something that they agree with. Got a player in the window. He hops in the ladder, and they're out of here. They're gone. They're done.
Yeah, Peter's going to continue watching through connector here to try and connect on something, but nope, now he backs off to the B site. They really do want to play it conservatively and make sure no one comes up on their flank. Extra Salt doesn't really have much reason to chase here, right? They already took out 3 players. Their economy is not exactly in a position where they'll be able to buy up comfortably in the next round should they lose a rifle, and they also have 3 Galils in play, so better for them to hang on to that stuff. The only bad news for them from the bad news bears is that they're going to be facing off against 2 rifles.
You know, John,
Yes.
I think we should start referring to the spot under balcony as Spongy. He always holds it. I know that'll only work in Premier and other NA events. You know, you go beyond that and people will be like, who's Spongy? But maybe not for long. Maybe not for long. See if he can write his name on the history books. But it just, you look, you're going to see him get into it again. Yep. Here he goes. Here he goes. Spongy in the Spongy spot. We've got other spots. I mean, on this map, you've got Get Right. Got plenty of spots named after players. Why not Spongy? You know, 2-time top player in the world, HLTV, Get Right, and also Spongy. Here we go! This is why Spongy plays this spot. It's working out. Everybody's dead!
What?
Swisher was in Sandwich, and that's what it allows them to do. It allows them to play off of Spongy. Because the thing is, players are always going to want to clear him, but he's so good at playing that position that even when you know he's there, even when you know you got to clear him, he doesn't care. He's still going to get one, at the very least. And they're looking for him, and meanwhile, Swisher swings and kills 3. And that's magnificent. That's what the Bad News Bears set up all the time. They'll play a player in Sandwich. They'll play a player on top of stairs. They'll have a guy swing through smoke off the contact on Spongy. They do it again and again and again. He's the old reliable. He's the guy who they know where he is. Just a question of can you deal with him? And then everything else is mutable in the way they hold that site.
They really got too focused on Spongy, though. You saw 3 players going after him. Swisher, then, like you said, wide swung from Sandwich, which no one was looking at, and got 3 frags on players that were, of course, had their backs to him.
The thing is, about that spot, you either need to commit a lot of utility or you have to commit a lot of bodies. And if you don't commit either of those things and you let him get a kill without the ability to trade, then you're going to have to do it. And that's why it's such a nuisance.
Well, Fang is going to find the frag here on Altar to kick things off in favor of Extra Salt, and they have 4 players moving on to the A site. In fact, all 5 now are there. The only player that decided to double back a little bit is, I believe Fang. Yeah, that's Fang going in the palace, just trying to check out the flank. And yeah, they're just going to save, or the Bad News Bears. I mean, not a bad call. You saw Extra Salt being conservative on their CT side as well, and the Bad News Bears are going to follow their lead in that regard.
Makes sense, especially since Jonji can find an upgrade onto a rifle. 3 rifles taken through a scout. They're fine with that. Yeah, no reason to fight back into this if you're not feeling confident about it. So they will concede an 8th round over to Extra Salt. Just a 4-round lead here. Still, though, should be plenty of money to reinvest for the Bad News Bears since they only need to buy 1 gun. Peter can drop over a rifle if they want to give Alter a full set of util, or Alter can buy himself and it'll be fine. Who needs head armor?
Yeah. Well, if you go up against the MP9, then he does, yeah. And he will get it. Extra Salt. Get the 8th, though. The lead is cut to 4 in favor of the Bad News Bears. And Alter's going to get some quick utility thrown over to the ramp. And they were pretty aggressive, are the Bad News Bears, towards that ramp to get the information. But in the meantime, Extra Salt has sent 4 players into T apartments, 2 of them now ending up in the B apartments at this point. Janji, the lethal player for the Bad News Bears, sitting at 18 frags on the map, leading the server, I do believe. And his team, of course. He's going to be looking for those frags as Extra Salt are almost certainly coming through. Here they come. He comes around, gets 2. Sonic and JT go down right before he does. Marky's the one to deal the killing blow. And they do have some control of the B site, but no, Swisher has rotated in, and he's going to get one while blinded. Fang going to have to rescue the situation, and he gets 2. OC comes out and gets Swisher. 2v1 in favor of Extra Salt, and somehow, Mike, it's Extra Salt coming out with the round. Wow, that was crazy.
I'm not sure either team deserved to win that.
It was really crazy.
It was really awkward. They just weren't clearing. Look, the player back pillars, right? So Swisher, he pulls out a smoke as he's peeking towards Catwalk, right as Fang comes around, and somehow Fang doesn't immediately clear that coming around the corner. Or no, that wasn't Fang. It was somebody else who died. So I won't put that bad juju on Fang. Fang was the one who helped them win the round. but he just doesn't check immediately. So then Swisher has half a beat to get the smoke there. It was weird. It was just weird. Very unusual for two teams on Mirage. I'll give a little bit more of a mulligan over to Extra Salt since they don't play it very often in officials, specifically never. But Bad News Bears, come on, Swisher. Come on. Got caught with a smoke. Really awkward timing there. I don't know. A little sus. Vote him off.
As Sonic,
I think he's faking tasks.
I agree, Mike. Get him out of here. That's Extra Salt. Back to the action, though. Fang is going to get a headshot on Alter. This should be pretty straightforward for Extra Salt. You see one player with the USP-S, and that's Peter. He goes down to Sonic. Spongy spotted it on default. Has some support, but it's not going to come through in time. Swisher hanging around jungle, peeking, looking for a trade. It doesn't come through. Nothing comes through at all for the Bad News Bears into the round. Clean win for Extra Salt. Builds up a good chunk of economy. And all of a sudden, they've cut the lead down to only 2.
I'm feeling 30 rounds. It's actually incredible right now. Look at Fang. 25 kills. 25 kills. The scoreboard right now is so top heavy for Extra Salt. JT and Marky, they're cruising along. They're like, come on guys, we'll hold your coats. Make it happen. And that's what's happening right now. Yeah. Fang in particular, just ridiculous. Alter's gonna try and get something going here. Spongy was right behind him, so there is a trade. And Peter, meanwhile, collects a kill in towards mid. So the op in mid, maybe that's the difference maker, and it is the double op as well. So Peter moves off. Jonji assumes the spot. He's playing right on the edge of smoke. He's gonna hop away. Risky here. He knows how potent the underpass can be, and Marky is in position. Looking to maybe get some damage in. They'll split towards the site, play the buddy system. We saw this happen for Extra Salt before. You have the man advantage, play with duos towards the site, take that control, make them waste time clearing out spots. The only issue is leaving mid vacant. Marky's now in position.
Yeah, so the Bad News Bears are going to have to get a little bit of info towards mid, but it looks like they are just going to settle for being on these bomb sites. Do you see Swisher poking around? Thought about going through market back to mid, decided, you know what? No, let's just stay on the B site. 2 on B, 2 on A, and hope that we can win these duels. Extra Salt are choosing to rotate back around through connector onto this A site. Jonji's pushed up aggressively to A ramp, so he won't really be able to support that much if Extra Salt managed to sneak on through to this site. But no, he turns around and gets Marky. Good snipe from Jonji, makes it a 4v2, and now Spongy, hiding in firebox, is going to take down Bomb, leaving only OC standing. OC takes out one, but the reinforcements are here. He will get isolated, and Peter's going to get the final frag, so the Bad News Bears win it and take the 13-10 lead. Oh, one thing I wanted to say, Mike, is that Fang is a player that typically on his previous rosters, if you look at Under 21, Levitate, PVO, X-Recon 5, and even Rugrats, he was the top frag all the time, the player that was relied on to get those frags. But now you see him getting overshadowed a bit by OC and Sonic. That doesn't mean he's not still an incredible player, and he's coming out and delivering here on Mirage.
I always associate him with Dust 2 games. It felt like every time his previous rosters played on Dust 2, it was just the Fang show. Like guaranteed above 30 kills, frequently above 35. Just absurd numbers in the killing department. Obviously, on a roster like Extra Salt, he's not necessarily required to do as much. He can take a backseat to names like OC or Sonic. Let them do some of the work. But here on Mirage, he's flexing. And it seems like maybe some of these maps where they're playing a little bit looser tends to flourish. Swisher gonna get one, but only one. There's an op to watch the angle, but do they flash? Do they clear? Does Jonji connect a kill? No, he does not. He's able to get away, though. It'll be a 4-on-4 retake. They're looking to pressure on towards the catwalk. Peter, meanwhile, has gotten into the market. Some pressure out of the window. Not enough. Jonji trying to get back into the angle. This is going to get a little spicy. You've just got that one op threat for Cat, but Alter's going to trade 1-for-1. Doing a good job of holding them in place. And another molly to prevent Jonji from being able to come forward. He's not able to get that kill, but he does buy space for his teammates to get forward and trade out Marky. Now it's all onto OC, and Jonji comes in for the final. Exclamation mark on the round. Double op will be retrieved. Bomb will be defused in the nick of time. That one got a little low, but we are now coming to potentially the close of map number 1.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, Extra Salt's put up a great fight. The best fight, in fact, that anyone has come up with against the Bad News Bears on Mirage, because, of course, they're 5-0, only lost, as mentioned, under 30 rounds here so far this year. But eventually, the Bad News Bears look like they're going to take control of this one and end it. But Extra Salt are going to call a timeout, Mike, to talk things over.
It's a good time to do so. This is your last ditch effort. You're going to invest in apparently OC buying all the way through. So this is going to happen. Sonic will presumably be kind of limited. JC can drop him. So it shouldn't be that much of an issue. But yeah, time is running out. Time is running out here. If you're going to make a stand on this particular map, you got to do it now. So what's the change up here? We've seen them start to get handled whichever site they go to. Some of their B takes have been a little more effective, I would say, but even then the retakes are risky. They're very dangerous. It's tough to hold on. So where do they take it?
Oh, man.
Bombs towards A initially, but this seems like it's just going to be a default, John. They're going to see if Bad News Bears gives them anything. And interestingly, they're not putting anyone towards mid. Considering the number of rounds we saw Bad News Bears get aggressive on it, it seems odd to me.
Well, I was going to say, I think they're trying to get Extra Salt to work mid. They're giving it away to them and saying, look, they're challenging them. Come to any site. We're going to take you on, you know?
This is a split on towards A. Two players are going to come out underpass. The question is, there's only the single op out on the server, actually, which is interesting. Bad News Bears, they're going to need Peter to come up strong because there's two players here in Spongy. One of them is, in fact, Spongy. Can they clear it? They've got to know there's some presence here. Meanwhile, they got a player in towards window. They catch Jonji on the rotation, so now there's problems, even for just the B-side anchor and Swisher. Bodies are dropping. OC, good shot. Spongy gets one, but he is traded. Do they expect Alter in the same angle? They do not. He's looking for the trigger discipline. He's waiting for JT. He's waiting to see if there's more. He's going to get this kill. Can't let the bomb go down. There we go. There's the execution. He knows OC is close at hand. He gets the damage. Swisher gets more. Alter! Perfectly played. Now the trade, and what a play from Alter. The patience, the poise, and he secures map point for the Bad News Bears.
Look, that was a really tough situation, right, Mike? You have two players stuck under balcony. In a lot of cases, that'll end up going the exact opposite way, but you look at the replay here. Alter came around at exactly the right time to get that 2K. And of course, the patience, the trigger discipline, hiding in the smoke prior to that, everything going right for Alter there. And the Bad News Bears get a 15th round victory. They only need one more, Mike, to secure this one. And you're looking at Extra Salt. They had to force up whatever they can get. That's going to be two Galils, an AK, a MAC-10, and a Deagle. Fang gets one. Alter trades it back immediately to make it a 4v4, and Alter's going to stay in connector here. We'll see if he gets spotted up by Extra Salt. Jonji there to support, though. Marky goes down, and everything going the Bad News Bears way.
The problem is there's an op right in that smoke. He doesn't want to give it to him. It's one of the reasons he's sticking around. Peter tried to go fast. He got caught. Ooh, can he get this trade? Doesn't want to let OC get his hands on the big green, that's for sure. And he's going to get two more. Alter now starting to waltz all over them, and it's left to Sonic. Can he secure it? No, he certainly cannot. And that is going to be map 1 pound for the Bad News Bears. We thought it was going to be this way. And indeed it is. The Bad News Bears see through their best map in the pool. Now, Extra Salt are going to get more of a crack at that when we get back.
Chiqui, escucha loco, siéntate y relájate un poco, que en esta vida el tiempo es loco, puedes perder momentos preciosos y sepas que cuando pides ayuda yo me levanto, todo lo que tengo lo comparto, y aunque me sienta triste yo canto, ay canto, vive una vida llena de personas que te respeten de veras y que lloren cuando mueras. Deja de mirar la acera y levanta la cabeza. Sigue pa'lante y no temas, resolverás los problemas. Ay, mamá, si una cosa no te gusta, cámbiala. Si la situación te asusta, enfréntala. Si la vida es injusta, tú grita. Deja de callar, escucha. Si la alegría te abraza, acéptala. Si la suerte
Welcome back to Esea Premier Season 36. What a bloody spicy matchup we've got going on right now between Bad News Bears and Extra Salt, and a bit of a change in terms of the wins at the moment. I've been looking at the head-to-head between these teams. A lot of close maps, but the boys on Bad News Bears haven't been able to pick up a map until now, so good to see them get one across the line right there, JTR. JRT, sorry. I know someone called JTR. I promise I didn't butcher your name for any other reason other than there is someone who actually plays Counter-Strike in ANZ called JTR, and we commentate him all the time, and it's like, it just rolled off the tongue. It was just natural muscle memory, mate. Sorry about that.
I believe you. It's all right. Yeah. What was your question again? Now you made me completely
The question was, Bad News Bears, they got a map. Good? Me gusta? Very good. I'm sorry, I'm getting
Yes.
thrown off by the
No, it's
Portuguese
okay.
and
Yeah.
Spanish music, and I'm not as good as deciphering those languages as some of you blokes are, because not as many of those blokes around these parts.
No, yeah. It's excellent for the Bad News Bears to pick up that first map. Breaks the ice against a very tough squad, like we alluded to. Extra Salt did push them to, I think, what would be their limit on Mirage, even though it seems 6-10 not as close as it can possibly get. But yeah, that's the first team that's really given them a run for their money on the map. But the Bad News Bears do say undefeated, 6-0 on Mirage. That said, speaking of maps that they've lost against Extra Salt on, Inferno being one of them. And Inferno is Bad News Bears one of their best maps. They're 10-2 on it. The only 2 losses they have on that map are against Extra Salt, and here they're going to go for maybe a third loss against Extra Salt. Hopefully not for their sake, but yeah, it's got to be getting into their heads.
Yeah, this is where we could actually see the upset potential come through. I mean, I don't know how much of an upset you'd call it. It's pretty clear to me that, at least in terms of the fragging in the server, these teams are fairly closely matched there, Mike. But obviously, we've got Inferno coming up next. This was a pick from Extra Salt. It's a map they've taken a couple of times over these boys, but it's a map that Bad News Bears seem reasonably comfortable playing, which is why I was kind of prompting you guys and asking you guys in the pre-show about, is this a funky veto? Is this a weird veto? Because I'm looking at the other series between these teams, and I'm seeing Extra Salt do what I would expect them to do in the veto. They go for a train or they go for a nuke, but not today, Mike. What's up with that?
It's super strange. They've basically allowed Bad News Bears onto their 2 best maps to start out this series, and that's unusual. It harkens back to what you were talking about, where is this matchup as important to Extra Salt? Are they maybe trying to figure some things out for potential future duels against this team, or maybe hide some strats on some other maps? That's something that we definitely have to question when you start to think about this. And I will say, even though Mirage went the way of the Bad News Bears, I actually liked what I saw from Extra Salt. Considering they don't play the map, they made some nice mid-game adjustments. They corrected to counter some of the things that Bad News Bears were throwing their way, some things that other teams have really struggled with, and they made it a really close game, considering, again, they don't play it, and it's Bad News Bears' best map. So now we head on to Inferno. These 2 teams just played on this map. It was close. The Bad News Bears felt like they could have won that match, but they lost too many advantageous situations, gave them back to Extra Salt. If they correct those mistakes, we could see the 2-0 here.
For sure, yeah. I think, at least in terms of the fragging department, all the boys looked on point. And, this veto is always an interesting one. It kind of reminds me of that meme. I love to use it all the time over here in our AU games. It's the saving strats for the major meme. And I love to use it on teams that would literally never make it to the major. So they're just kind of perpetually saving the strats. But there is a very real possibility, we're up near the top of the group here. So maybe a bit of a funky veto coming in there. But now we're going over onto Inferno. Extra Salt, they picked it up twice, JRT, but it has been very, very close both times, right?
Yeah, it has. 16-12 last time, and I think a similar scoreline in the previous one. I actually don't want to have that one on hand, but yeah, it was. They were both very close affairs. The thing is, and Mike mentioned it, the Bad News Bears shot themselves in the foot a lot, and that wasn't just in the Extra Salt matchup. That was overall in the close qualifier. It's the reason they didn't make the final. I don't want to take away anything from High Coast. They were incredible throughout their run to the finals of DreamHack close qualifiers. But the Bad News Bears were really playing some Counter-Strike that had too many mistakes in it to come out victorious, especially against a team like Extra Salt. If they close those gaps, and Mike already said it, they have a chance at pulling off the 2-0. But will they? I don't know. I feel like Extra Salt really have a lot of rhythm going on their Inferno, and I wouldn't mind seeing a map number 3.
I think this series deserves it, to be honest. Kind of robbed of the map number 3 in the previous series that we have seen between these two teams. So I would love to see it personally. But before we do get to see Inferno and whether we make it to a potential map 3, we'll have to go to a short break. So we'll see you back here soon.